Well, I had a feeling that my camera wasn't going to work because it wasn't working. It's one thing I don't like about OBS. Camera's awfully finicky. How I got it to work, it's a mixture of guesswork and it doesn't make any sense. So I always just let it be. Well, welcome to the Corsair Cup, everyone. As you can see, I am the one streaming. I'm in control. As Rifkin is sick, I think. So he messaged me a little while ago saying that he had trouble sleeping. And I imagine he's in a deep rest right now, which I will let him be. I don't really mind solo casting, covering. It was a bit of a last minute thing. I had to figure out, like, oh, is he doing what's happening? But I think at this point in time, it's safe to say that he is, in fact, well, not going to be here. Not for a little while anyway. So it's just me and you guys. And the bracket is final. This is a 3-minute delay. It's been final for a while. We're casting Awers versus Ziggy first. Two names that aren't the biggest, but should be recognizable if you come to this channel for European stuff. And even if you were here yesterday for the 2v2. Awers was one of the 2v2 contestants. Actually, I think I'm in the lobby, though. It'll take a little while. But it seems like a good turnout today. We got a couple of the Koreans, Keen and Billowy, showing up, and then some solid Europeans. A lot of Zerg. What else is new? Bly, sort of. Xanster, there we go. Oh, Penguin is the Korean Zerg. His name is now Penguin 2 for some reason on the bracket. Who knows? Oh yeah, we're just waiting for Ziggy. It says he's in the channel and he's been not AFK, but he's just needs to accept the invite. The cat's currently fighting. They're pretty cute when they fight. You guys can watch this. Aren't they just so cute, guys? Yeah, Paulo knows my kitty sound. Dang, yeah, I should use a solar eclipse joke. I was actually watching the NASA stream before I figured out that I needed to go live here. It's okay. I think maybe seeing it live is a whole new world, but seeing it on Twitch is another type of whole new world. Get him! Get him, Paulo! Get him! Oh, what? Lame. Paulo concedes. So lame. Well, Ziggy is now away, so I really hope he's not literally away. I mean, I understand not being here for the first couple of minutes, because, like, you know, maybe they delay the start or something. You thought it would take 5 minutes, takes 10 minutes, like, I don't know, but to just, like, sign up and check in and be in the chat channel and not show up for 15 minutes is, like, really, really annoying. Just throwing it out there. I don't think I have the login anymore. Oh, yeah, I don't. It's awkward. Some random guy streaming under it in Team Liquid. Paulo, you disappoint me. Well, I was really hoping to get started and have the guys in the lobby and, like, just go, but Ziggy's really holding up that plan, isn't he? Oh, maybe? Okay, finally accepted. Oh, it took 9 minutes. That's alright. Alright, thank God. They're both ready to go. We're getting into Abyssal Reef. This is the Corsair Cup. And finally getting a game started. I will be solo casting as Rifkin is still kind of MIA. Imagine he's resting. Well, thank you very much to Little Tab for the Twitch Prime sub. We had a lot of those yesterday, and it was very much appreciated. I don't know what it is about the weekend, this weekend in particular, but there seemed to be a lot of Prime subs that were up for given away, and if you guys aren't using it, then you definitely should use it on this channel. No! The W's just too much early on. That's from when we were doing the 2v2s. That's 3.0. Oh, fancy. Oh, my bad. Oh, God. You know how little I want to move this? After all the bitching that happens when it's, like, not perfectly lined up with everything. Oh, my God. You guys have to deal with this. Okay. We'll use this for now. In the top left, in this best of 3. Okay, luckily same hotkey. It is the yellow Terran, Ziggy. And in the bottom right, as the red Terran, he is Awers. So, as I said like 8 minutes ago, you guys, the regulars of BaseTradeTV probably recognize these names even a little bit. Let's actually swap that too. And it's because we have cast them like every now and again in the Corsair Cup or maybe in a qualifier for Ting, for instance, or something. Ours was playing in the 2v2 yesterday, so that's maybe where you recognize the name if you were here. But obviously we have a TvT. Both of these guys, most notable to us, I believe, my personal opinion, is because they are European Terrans, and they're just not that common of a breed anymore. You know, and the fact is that they're even if they are common amongst, like, you know, mid-masters or something like that, like, that's not what we're really looking at. We're looking at how good can they be up against these established pros in the Corsair Cup, like Bly, Euthermal, Nurchiolix, etc., etc. We don't have the most star-studded lineup for the Corsair Cup today. We've had certainly really historic matches like Showtime versus Nurchio in the past, but I still appreciate seeing all the signups. You got a couple of new people that are a bit nervous, but figured things out, I guess. Actually participating again. It is open to all levels. if you want to get the chance to, you know, play against your favorite pro gamer, then sometimes this is the way to do it, and sometimes you'll get bopped, but it can be fun anyway. Thank you to Bangdosa for the Twitch Prime sub, 11 months in a row. Alright, so TvT, we have both of them going for 1 base openers. Scuffle in the middle with the Reaper here. She probably could have gotten that one. One person using the war chest skins, the other one not. That's the really important distinction. We all know that's the truth. Cyclone actually is going to be good enough to push this back. It's not much more of a reason to keep these Reapers on the front line, and unfortunately he's going to lose one of them because of that mistake. Command Center is going down on a high ground for Awers, low ground for Ziggy. Now Awers definitely plays mech, and he definitely has been playing like safe 2 mech in the past. So high ground Command Centers don't sound too odd for him. That was weird. Cyclone almost like glitched into the ground. Okie dokie then. But Ziggy is kind of actually one of the Terrans that I think is a little bit more hopeful to see on the rise in the next year as a consistent, like, mechanical Terran. Like, playing kind of normal, but playing to his strengths. But he can also play mech, don't get me wrong. Like, we've seen him do that, too. But ours, I want to say, is, like, almost pure mech. So he's always going to be a little bit of in the odd club, you know, like Lily King or something like that, which we haven't seen for a while, but I guess he's on vacation or something. I don't know. Thank you to Pat22043 for the Twitch Prime sub. Reaper's still trying to get, I guess, a scout in here. They already saw most of what they needed to see, though. Command Center and a tech lab. They would like to see the siege tank production. I mean, this is pretty early siege tank production. It's going to be safe, and combined with the Vikings, it can actually be an offensive attack if you cover them correctly. But doing that's always a little bit dangerous. Very few, but important units. Met in the middle with a concave of a lot, but unimportant units. The unimportant units will still win out. But Ziggy is not really doing anything different than ours. He's also going for tank production and Viking production. So this might just be a mech versus mech battle with heavy emphasis on that air war. Certainly, Abyssal Reef is one of the maps you'll see, you know, the Viking control still be very important. Where, you know, in TvT in general, especially people who don't go mech, other maps that don't have this, like, abuse of a cliff, the Viking control, maybe you go for it, but maybe you don't. Like, it actually isn't too important. I would say that Abyssal Reef, it's actually, it's like, whoa, okay, that's rude. It's actually difficult if you don't go for your own Viking control, because if they do get this situation where they have 5 Vikings to your 2, and they siege you up on this natural, it's pretty hard to break. A little bit of Raven harassment, not doing too well. That was a decent scout for ours, though, because he would also like to know exactly what Ziggy's doing. He saw a similar setup, I suppose, with his own Reaper, so now he just confirms that that's actually what's coming out of the starport. Looks like Ziggy's going to be the first one to move out. As I said, like, it's not a very large ground army. It's actually a very large air army, but not a very large ground army. A lot of very important units that if there were, for instance, like 20 Marines, even without stim, getting a concave right here, would actually be a bit questionable for Ziggy to move out like this. So, really hoping to be, like, not caught in the middle of the map, or going up against someone who is doing something defensive and very similar to him. And that's exactly what ours is doing, is going tanks and Vikings, just not, like, any faster, really. In fact, he's a little behind in the Viking count. So, Ziggy gets the upper hand here. It's not too often, I would say, that we see this exact mimic setup. Usually we see again, the defending player, maybe they have a lot of Marines, and they try and circumvent the army, or just bust down the ramp once they have combat shields, or something like that, but the response from ours, just to wait until he has more Vikings, worked out fine. With Defender's advantage, even though he was behind initially, he was ahead eventually. These tanks, these poor tanks, Vikings on the ground, make an awesome ground force against mechanical. And that worked out really well. They both are, in fact, going for mech. And Awers successfully deflects that attack, but it wasn't, I would say, the most committed thing in the world. Losing 2 tanks, of course, for Ziggy does hurt. He also lost the air war by losing those 2 Vikings, but is trying to make up for that. I mean, this is a weird situation where, because they both were so insistent on going into the air war, dedicated so many resources into the air war, stopping their Viking production could actually be the death of them. They both know that they're going to be going for mech here. They both probably play each other a lot, recognize just, you know, they both went for very similar openers. That does lead into mech very well. I'm pretty sure they both know they're going to go mech without seeing necessarily the extra factories or the armories, and as such, the air war is going to kind of be like a place where they're stuck. But interestingly enough, Awers is adding in Widow Mines and a Liberator, so he might just lose out on the Viking count purely, but defensive Widow Mines, he could get a couple lucky shots. He scans ahead, sees tanks, you know, continuing forward, sees a very large Viking army. Maybe that's not where he attacks. Maybe he just goes over to the right side. There are tanks set up there too, but it's you know, it's a mech player. They're both mech players. They're not going to have a lot of tanks to throw around their bases. Not yet. Their production really only finished up. Ziggy's also going for a pretty greedy double armory, whereas ours only went for 1, and only just now. So his army supply should be in the lead, and it is. Oh, the Raven is really going to make a big difference here. The Viking count was very similar, but the point defense drone really helped. 7 to 6, 7 to 6, 6 to 5. Like, it's very, very close, but I think Ziggy with the extra Viking looks to maybe have done just enough past that point defense drone to win the air war, and as such will be able to chase down that Raven. Only a couple SCVs died to the tank fire before the high ground was lost, and it looks like the ones that were firing on the SCVs did in fact die too, so not much more to be done there. Another 2 SCVs actually died to this, and the Raven somehow escapes. The Vikings definitely should have been on top of that. That was a mistake. Thank you to Mr. McCon for the Twitch Prime sub. Oh, random. Just hell of mine. Where's the sound effect? Oh, that's fine. I was like, the music sounds loud, but why the sound effect's a little dull? This is a different slider for that. Oh, Barracks just lifted, looking for any Doom drops. I mean, the possibility of Doom drops for mech player is obviously lower than that of a bio player, but especially if you're both going to be going for these Viking wars. But I mean, technically it can happen. Even a single Widow Mine or Medevac produced, maybe a Widow Mine drop. That's maybe where I was thinking. But also a Hellbat drop can be bothersome. More likely that was just someplace with the Barracks. Liberator does a surprise amount of damage because also distracted for a couple of Hellions get in here. So 8 in total from this double harassment before it's cleaned up. Both getting onto 4th bases, and this is truly still a pretty even mech versus mech game, which means that it could be very, very long. What a game to choose for when I'm solo casting and doing a double day, as I have a cast later this evening. Great choice, Zombie Grub. Yes, anyone admiring Ziggy's skins, the war chest from mech is usually pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. Actually, his Hellions don't think from a war chest, but everything else is. No, maybe not the Vikings either. Just skins in general for Terran actually are just cooler. I mean, the Zerg got like just spikes, you know? Like, I don't know. I mean, it's okay, but it's. I think mechs really got the visual upgrade. There was one unit though recently that we were looking at, like yesterday or something like that just kind of looked kind of lame. Oh, the Cyclone. Yeah, the Cyclone doesn't look that good, but you know, I'll give them a pass on one of the skins. Yeah, you can see it here actually. This is the war chest one. I mean, look at it. It just has like little wings on the side. It's like, guys, I'm really cool. Look at my wings. It makes me go zoom faster. Yeah, that's really dumb. But this is a beautiful position for Abyssal Reef. Again, if you have that air superiority, then you're going to be able to stay here indefinitely. They do not want to move the tanks up, especially now that tank count has gotten so high. This is no longer 2 or 3 tanks that 5 tanks of the concave can go ahead and you know, take out. This is drastically different. It's also a usable position, but the Viking count of ours was really a lot better. It was, I think, even higher, and just defensive properties, of course, so the 7 to 5 is deceiving. It was like 1,000,000,000 to 0 for all intents and purposes for that single fight. So the Viking lands just to save itself. These guys are on some pretty baller economies as well. I mean, 4 bases, they were up to a lot of SCVs, even though their command center has maybe turns into an orbital. Of course, you want planetaries to help out against Blue Flame Hellion run-bys as the game gets longer and longer, but actually, sometimes you see, like, pros not go for a planetary in Mech vs. Mech, and this is back when it was popular, so I'm talking Heart of the Swarm. And there's certainly a reason for that, but you know what? Ours, a little weak on the right side. Didn't realize that Ziggy was moving over there so brazenly, and actually gets a little blindsided, but the Vikings land, and that is enough to deal with tanks nowadays with their new buff. They're pretty good. But anyways, the orbital thing, right? So he's turning another one to a planetary. The idea, I think, is that if you do have a base layout, for instance, like Athlon Waste, where you had, you know, your 3rd and your 4th kind of protected just by your army being out on the map, there really wasn't too much of a reason not to get an orbital. And, you know, if the game really went on for so long and you were in a pickle, you could actually lift against tank run-bys and hopefully be okay. I kind of feel like that way on Abyssal Reef, like one of these bases, or both of them could have been an orbital, but ours attacking in here, that's a lot more important. He had the Viking advantage and maybe thought he had it for good based off that last fight. It wasn't that solid though when he actually ends up losing the Viking war here, but he just took out a lot of Ziggy's tanks, like a lot of them. Didn't really matter about the Viking war because they had already moved into each other's sight. And that was, you know, that Viking war took a long time to actually decide. So ours, his superior tank count just rolls over Ziggy's, as it was also just out of position. A lot of tanks were on the high ground, not necessarily helping. And now he's still going to get into the production. A Thor is trying to pop out here, and these are unsieged tanks, so actually ours not taking the best trade at the last second here, also partially surrounded. Even if he had siege, maybe it wouldn't have gone that well. And Ziggy at least holds onto his production and onto his economy. Only lost 12 workers, which is not really that bad. But he needs to get his tank count back up. And that's always going to be a weakness of Mech. Even when their production isn't compromised, it still is difficult to reproduce. Sure, you can use as many Hellions as you want with that reactor, but the tanks, that's quite a different story. And really, he needs to use those reproducible, you know, cheap, quick Hellions to try and buy more time. But he has been just sent back to his own base after his attack on the right side and has not been able to move out. Now we see some Hellions trying to go somewhere, but there's a center tower, there's planetaries. It'll be hard for them to actually find some place to get in and do damage. We have the orbital lifted from the main base. Ours just made an extra one. So if this goes down, Ziggy will be feeling a burn in his economy and his fuel usage as well. Upgrades are ahead for Ziggy. Remember, he went for the plus the 2 armories to begin with, but ours is trying to catch up here, and might just have the superior, like too superior of an army for upgrades to matter. I mean, plus 3 is almost finishing up here for Ziggy's tanks, but he only has 1 tank. What's the matter? This Thor can take quite a few hits, but even that is not going to be able to save Ziggy, and he just took 1 too many bad fights. Ours, I do believe, is going to be taking this game. He's still completely untouched on the other side of the map, where Ziggy is still losing out on workers. Well, Ziggy's not willing to give up yet. He did manage to kill quite a few tanks just by, like, landing Vikings in the concave, so maybe he's thinking, like, well, if I just get another situation like that, maybe ours is, you know, just overconfident I can take another fight. But these supplies are really getting into, like, there's no possible way type of zone. And there was GG. Ours takes game number 1, showing himself as the Mech Master. So the next map is going to be Catalina, and good news, guys, I still have the old version set up on Ops, so I can play that as the intro. People say sounds are good. Well, Ziggy, I'd love to go, but ours needs to be in the lobby. You know, that's how games work in StarCraft. Maybe one day the AI will be good enough to have a pro gamer versus AI tournament, like a Dota, but it's not right now. Alright, the players are ready, and the countdown has begun, so let's go into that beautiful, beautiful map intro. See you soon. Oh, what a beautiful thing. Isn't it? I have to fix the overlay once again, because now we're back on good old Game Heart. That isn't quite what I wanted. That's good enough. We're gonna work with that. Guys, the second game, and we are on, in fact, Catalina. In the bottom right, I don't know why I changed this. This actually was correct in the first place. In the bottom right, he's down 1. It is the yellow Terran, Ziggy. In the top right, as the red Terran, he's Awers. Because that's the only way I could possibly pronounce that name. Now, Ziggy chooses Catalina and is choosing to proxy on it. Of course, the proxy Reapers, you can go ahead and jump down this ledge, and it is pretty darn close to your opponent, even if they were spawning over here. So that's the one trick, of course. It's a 3-player map. There's a chance you don't go to the right place first, but it's overall small. So if you go to the wrong place first, it's not as bad, especially with Reapers. With Lings, I guess it could be a little bit worse if it was like a ZVZ. But ours, speaking of scouting, can't see the high ground. Would be a beautiful thing if he did. Is at least scouting the right position first, so we'll be able to see that Ziggy doesn't have a barracks at home, and we'll be at least trying to react. But the good news is, you know, you can't really react too much if you're already going for 1x expand. You can maybe get the second Reaper instead of a reactor, which is actually very important. But what's a lot better is just to already be doing something on one base and making sure to continue your Reaper production. Like, this is kind of the ideal scenario for ours, and only miss micro at this point in time can really screw up this game for him. He should be taking a lead off of this, especially because his factory was so quick. Maybe even buying some time with his SCV. He buys time for a Hellion or a Cyclone, and he is good to go. Now, this Reaper should not, I don't think he should actually be searching for the barracks. This is maybe a mistake. We'll see if it is. He's actually not even searching for the racks. He's circumventing it and going towards the main base. This might still be a mistake because that first Reaper, of course, stops this potential snowball effect. But as long as he can get a Cyclone out, it's like kind of like, okay, don't lose too many SCVs, and the Cyclone will solve all your problems. That's kind of what's the situation for ours right now. A Reaper just went back home, it looks like, for Ziggy, and is going to be able to take out ours' Reaper, so not a very good use of that at all. But you know what? He only lost 2 SCVs, and the Cyclone pops out. Ours is on his way to a starport already, safely in the back. And Ziggy, that's where you really fall behind for the aggressive 2-racks player, is in that tech. You don't have a Cyclone, your starport's later, and while your economy is still all well and good compared to the other guys who went for 1 base, those tech options are very, very important. As I said, the Cyclone will solve all of your problems. It requires quite a few Reapers to change that fact. Like 6, and you still gotta micro it a little bit, you know? Like, Cyclone will do wonders. Woodamite even pops out, hoping to catch a lucky shot on the Reapers as they go up the ramp. They figure that ours is protecting this side, so the ramp might be their only option. So it's actually kind of a clever place to put that Widowmine. We have Banshees coming out for ours. A Banshee is probably the better move. You can also try and get a Liberator, because you have to wait for a Tech Lab to get that, so it is pretty fast, and you know their starport's behind. so they don't have any anti-air. But the Banshee it's gonna have more flexibility and potential, even if they do have a response to it. And of course, you can get more than one if you really want. But the Widow Mine was scouted by Ziggy. Of course, he lost a couple Reapers to it, but it was cleaned out. Banshee is revealed. But a Raven was already being produced for Ziggy. He's got double Cyclone coming out too. So, I mean, lock-on still won't do a lot of damage, but double lock-on, you know, sure, you might have the potential to get the last shot on a weak Banshee. The Banshee actually goes right to his command center. This wasn't a bad idea. Ziggy's kind of actually lucky that it finished in time. I think like 5 seconds difference, 10 seconds difference. Unfortunately, the Banshee runs right into the Raven and the double Cyclone. Like I said, the Cyclone lock on not much damage, but you know the other lock on happened, and this Banshee I think is actually dead. So I mean that was that was almost the full extent of a Cyclone lock on, and overall it still does 160 damage. A Reaper is still trying to distract Awers. The command center is also going to put on the high ground. Awers is just, I don't know, it seems to be something he does a lot in like any given situation. I really feel like it's just usually, I don't know. The command center on the high ground versus low ground thing is I think, for a lot of pros, I mean, like, think about, like, Korean Terrans, I think you ask them that, and they're like, well, you gotta put it on the low ground. If you can't get on the low ground, then you're screwed anyways type thing, right? Except in extreme scenarios where they're, like, being contained or something, right? But if it's just, like, a one-rax expand versus a one-rax expand, and you put it on the high ground, I think they'd be kind of like, why? That, like, loses you so much. But, of course, when it comes to the lower leagues, obviously, if you're in Gold or even Masters, then I think that the defensive command center is probably the way to go. These guys are Grandmaster, and they're getting quite good, obviously appearing more and more in Corsair Cups and getting a bit farther every single time. But they're definitely, like, not the names you think of when you think of the European Terran. That still kind of belongs to Euthermal, maybe Optimus, maybe if you're old school, some of the, you know, older names, like Hero Marine. Actually, Hero Marine's doing quite good nowadays, so I can't even say that's old. But the point is, like, these guys aren't on your minds. But they're getting there. And certainly by playing mech all the time, they're going to be a little more memorable. Anyways. Theory aside, we got a lot of Cyclones coming forward here with only a handful of Hellions. Ziggy did the same exact thing. Just consistently built Cyclones from his reactor factory. Another Raven coming out for him, too. I don't know. Was that... That was his scan. I don't know what he's scanning for. I think that might have been a mistake. Alright, well, okay. This is the first Raven's still alive. So that, you know, 2 Ravens would do a lot of extra damage with the auto turrets, and obviously that Banshee would not get any free pot shots with the detection available. So Awers decides not to run in there. It says here, the last of the Reapers does die. And even though Ziggy had 2 barracks, he went home with one, scouted with the other. He does still decide to go for mech. I would still put Awers as more of a mech guy, but Ziggy is like, I guess, like, compared to other Terrans, still a lot more mech, obviously, now twice in a row. And I guess I have some backing for that, other than just, like, the feeling of having watched these guys every now and then. Because I've definitely seen Ziggy go for bio. But maybe I'm thinking of, like, a TvP or something, I don't know. It was proven last game. Like, Awers did have the better mech game overall. You know, if you're a player that does something a little bit special, you have your own build, or you have your own style that's just not in the meta, and then someone else also tries to do it. I don't know about you guys, but there's like a special like feeling of like, oh, you're trying this? No, I'm the best at this. And I wonder if Awers is having that too in mech versus mech gaming. Again, I think these guys probably played each other more than once. But Ziggy comes in here with the attack, maybe thinking that his double Raven, no, triple Raven, my bad, would do enough with the auto turrets, but they weren't really that impressive. This one even missed an auto turret. Some of them are going down, but maybe finally at the end here, getting enough damage. Awers has decided to retreat. His own Raven does get taken out. It's 4 Cyclones to 7 in favor of Ziggy, but Awers' Banshee Looks like even with a Raven still available, that Raven was detecting it, he still scanned. They just got a lot of damage done. It wasn't what he was focusing on. The lock-ons are going on top of Awers' Raven as well, and the Banshee was maybe just not thought of. So that got a lot of extra damage in there. Maybe crucial damage towards the end of that fight when Awers was running low on Cyclones, and Awers does successfully defend. But Ziggy managed to get a third base and an orbital behind this on location, whereas Awers still doesn't even have one, and he did end up taking the better end of that fight. Now, Awers also managed to get +1 during that fight, which is usually a very important upgrade in Cyclone vs. Cyclone, but just couldn't really beat out the, I guess, the supreme numbers of auto turrets. I mean, still, like, three Ravens that each had, like, 2 or 3 auto turrets apiece. I think in the last patch, where the Raven was changed, that is just obliteration. But that time wasn't as much of a stomp. It still puts Ziggy in the lead. Let's see what the +1 can do. We have some tanks in the mix now as well. Vikings could always land, and Awers, I think he just gave the game to Ziggy. Yep, GG. Perhaps realizing, okay, I don't have a third base, and I don't have that big of an army. Let's try one last hurrah. Didn't work out. Not too often you see Cyclone vs. Cyclone in this game, in this matchup, but that's what they both decided to do. They get a Squeedus for the 14-month resub. Tasty Starcrafts. And Valengen for the 35-month resub. Oh, it's getting quite warm in my room. I always get warm in my room around this time because this is like the sun literally coming through my window. It's gone over and on my side of things. So between the hours of like 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. it's like bearing down on me. So it's all set up 1-1, and Awers decides to go for Ascension to Ire. He did a great job defending against the 2-Rags Reaper last game. The aggression wasn't really the problem. At least the early game aggression wasn't the problem. But the triple Raven Cyclone attack ended up cutting him a little too hard. And the Banshee's not really doing any economic damage, I think also kind of hurts. For what their potential is, even if when they do have a Raven and a Viking, sometimes just, especially if you get more than one, to get in there and do damage, to get really nothing is quite disappointing. Not surprisingly, this is the longest first round match, with that mech versus mech game to start things off. And Bly is waiting in the round 2 for the winner of this. Well, here we are. It is game number 3. Side up 1-1 in the bottom right as the blue Terran. It's Awers. In the top left, as the yellow Terran, it's Ziggy. These guys have gone mech every game. Ziggy took a little bit of a pit stop at the Reapers, but still went into mech after that. And I would expect them to do the same thing in the third game. What's more interesting is, since both these guys are Terran and both these guys like playing mech well enough, is that what they do versus Bly? Whoever wins, I think it's an interesting question. I would like to follow them to face Bly. The other round 2 matches look like they've already been sorted and started. Hangar vs. Answer, Keen vs. Hellraiser, and Sorta versus Billowy. Because Hellraiser, another noteworthy name in that he is kind of this up-and-comer, recognized more and more in the brackets and doing better and better. He's actually been taking out quite a few of the like usuals, like Billowy. So really earning respect of these like one-off best of 3s. He took out Gerald's, who is also a name I now recognize. but it looks like it was just actually a walkover. So oh, Rifkin, where's the cat cam? Well, the cat cam is where the cats usually lay, and the cats aren't there right now, so it'd be pointless. Thank you to Klobos for the 30-month resub. Did I see the eclipse? Well, considering I still don't think it's going to be near me for another few hours, no. Also, the most visible place near me is in South Carolina. Or is it already happening in South Carolina? I was only vaguely paying attention to the NASA thing, to be honest, so who knows. More importantly, TvT. We got 1 base versus 2. Ours, with the 1 base attack, looks to be setting up maybe a Wood Mine drop? Always such a weird thing to see. It's not weird that it's uncommon. It's just weird to me to see it because in TvT, of course, the Wood Mine isn't one-shot workers. Well, the splash isn't one-shot workers. There we go. But it is something that does happen. You bring the Marines with it, and even though it doesn't kill the SCVs, it puts them so low, the Marines get extra damage in there, and it sometimes works. I still always think it's like, why this opener as opposed to any other? But that's what he's decided to do, and we'll see if it does any damage, following up with the Cyclone. Ziggy has expanded to the low ground and has not had to worry about anything defensive in the early game. He's going for Hellions here, and looks to be a Raven or Banshee follow with that tech lab in close proximity to the starport. There's a Wood Mine drop. He's missing 1 Marine, but that's alright. 5 Marines can still get the damage on very, very, very low SCVs, assuming the Wood Mine even gets that good of a shot. The Cyclone could distract in the at the front, or it could be elevatored up. Ascension Ire does have a little bit of space in that main that just isn't covered initially. Looks like it's going to go towards the front. Now, 4 Hellions and a Reaper can take the Cyclone out, but clearly it takes some time. But most importantly, it's distracting. So even though the Cyclone is going to die, it takes out 2 Hellions with it, and the Wood Mine drop goes in the main base. Drops the Wood Mine really way too soon. Oh my god, but it still gets the shot off. That was a reach. That wasn't even... There's no way he thought that was actually going to happen. Alright, well, that's a lot of injured SCVs. They did pull away from the Marines, which I said is the most important part. The Marines try and drop on top, but not quite focus firing. There we go, there's another one down. Auto turret helps defend, takes a large chunk of health out of that medevac, and 5 SCVs total. If he saves the medevac, it's not that bad, actually. If he gets another SCV here, that'd be great. There we go. If he had dropped the rest, he would have gotten another one. I got 3 wanted to do. So 8 in total, saves the medevac, loses the Marines and the Wood Mine. I'd say that's still pretty worth it. The Cyclone death is unfortunate because that could have maybe retreated in another world, had the Hellions pulled back immediately to respond, but oh well. We'll see, he has another one fresh and new anyways. Well, we do have command centers for both players being put down. 3rd base command centers, that is, and pretty closely matched, but Ziggy took those 8 SCV losses, puts him at even with a bit faster of a 3rd command center. He gets a bit of the lead here. Supply block, let's look away from that. Raven production from Awers. He was the one that had less Ravens last game. 3, what was it, probably like 6 to 8 auto turrets did definitely help Ziggy last time with that break. I don't know if Awers is going to be going up to 3, and it looks like it's not the case. He's already transferred over onto a reactor, but 2 is still a decent amount once they've gathered that energy. Oh, what's this here? Another Wood Mine? Nope, Hellions. So if a lot of the SCVs were so low, then these 2 Hellions could do a ton of damage, as most of them are still pretty healthy. It's gonna probably not do too much. It's like 4 Hellions is really, of course, the scary number. 3 still frightening. 2, I'll get around them depending on that. Third base is already landed for Ziggy. Ours is floating it over, but as an orbital already. So the decision to go before the orbital is done when you take bases as a Terran player is not really that interesting, but I'll talk about it anyways. Generally, if you are in a normal game where not much has happened, then putting as an orbital beforehand is the better move. It gathers the energy after you mule once, and then you already can like drop down a mule as it lands, usually, like that type of deal. But if you have a lot of SCVs and are either being contained or it's a very wonky game, then setting it down as a regular command center can actually be better because you want to transfer the SCVs that you have in surplus more so than you want the bit extra energy of the floating command center. So, if you ever wanted to know. That just generally seems to be the consensus anyways. It's very rarely even a subject we're talking about, so it's like, you like 99% of the time see the orbital landed. Anywho, it's now an orbital. Double armory from Awers. He's had the, what was it? He had the faster upgrades in the second game. That's right. He was slower in the first game, actually. He went for a single armory. But it seems like upgrades just actually haven't played that big of a part. In the first game, he was later to them, but still won that game. In the second game, he had them, but still lost the game. So, flip-flop there. Ziggy's just faster to +1, so it might not be so bad. If he adds the armory right as that's done, just start 2-1 to the 1-1 type thing. But we'll see. Second starport already on the way for ours. There was a heavy emphasis on Viking Wars in the first game, but I believe that was all off of one starport. It was just producing so early on, right? But I don't know about the second starport. We'll see actually how that works out. Certainly that air control can mean a lot because it's not, with the introduction of the Liberator, it's not just about having the sights, not having to use scans or sacrifice whatever unit that you have to. It's also about actually being scared of the Liberator. A single Liberator can force you to unsiege, and in that situation, that's when they pounce on you. It's not as quick as it was, is for a bio player that gives the Liberators. They will literally stim on top of your army as soon as you let your tanks unsiege. But it's a similar idea, and honestly, if you're really winning the Viking War mech versus mech, then you should just be able to dominate with the Liberators. Luckily, the Thor is an okay option. As soon as people realize that, with the changes to it and all that, that ended up being an okay response, but it's kind of a question of, do you recognize that you've lost the air war quick enough to even get a Thor? Those are some mass scans going down, checking out how many bases Awers just have. Ziggy sees 2 extra, this one not taken, but he did not see the army so much, so he has to run back into position. A couple auto turrets being thrown down. What is the Viking count? 10-12 in favor of Awers, but Awers also has 2 Ravens, so he should have won that no problem. It looks like it's kind of still a close race because the auto turrets were used on the tanks instead of the actual point defense drone or the Viking. It looks like 1 point defense drone was used, but still not really enough to look as OP as maybe it should have. 2 Raven and a couple more Vikings really should have won that war quite handily, but that's not what happened. It's now 3 Vikings to 1 as Awers is reinforcing from across the map. He managed to grab the position, but it's really not that great of a position. Really breaking through is the better option, so he unsieges and leaves, and it looks like the game continues to be quite even. These Hellion skins have very loud vroom vroom. Is that on purpose? That's supposed to happen? Is that a feature of them? I think it's not. Anyways. Planetary being set up for ours is 4th and 5th, it looks like. Nope, that's it. One of these is an orbital. There you go, there's the orbital. This is definitely susceptible to Hellion run-bys, unless he builds a supply depot wall. But Ziggy has not really been doing many of those, so maybe he feels totally safe with that. No one really has control of the Zelnaga, but luckily Awers has a single Widow Mine scouting the army positioning of Ziggy. Ziggy, not so much. Totally blindsided by this attack on his 3rd base. It's really not that strong of a ground army from Awers, though. He has been heavily relying on, of course, the double starport, which is winning him the air war very much so this time, but isn't really helping enough to matter. SCVs go down a couple Hellbats he wasn't paying attention to initially. Those will definitely have to be cleaned up. There we go. But he did just win the ground war pretty heavily. 6 tanks to 14. Oh boy. But this is where ours would ideally get a couple Liberators or a Banshee. There we go. But like I said, like, does the defending player, the guy who's losing the Viking War, does he realize what's happening and get a Thor or not? And it's now been 2 fights. One, he kind of lost the Viking War. The second one absolutely lost the air control. It would be really weird to see a guy who plays mech a lot not remember to go for Thors. Not just realize, okay, I'm losing the Vikings here. Thor's got to be the way to go. So that's what he's making. 3 of them. That should be enough. I don't think you have to really make any more than that. Awers is trying to rally forward here and just try and catch Ziggy out of position truly and entirely, at least once. This does some serious damage, not to the SCV line, but to the tank line, but still wasn't quite enough to break that base. So Ziggy up to 4 bases, but Awers, of course, already on 5. He also out-expanded Ziggy in that very first game, and that did contribute to his eventual win. Let's not forget that he had those faster 1-1 upgrades, but it looks like Ziggy was faster to +2, so it's actually pretty even, since Awers had to go into ship weapons and not continue on with his vehicle weapons. But Ziggy, he left his tanks here. He has his Thors rallied here, too. They take out the Banshee and the Liberator. Trying to take the Liberator now, but the tanks on the low ground, or on the ground, rather, have already done the job. That's it, actually. GG. Ziggy, not able to match ours in a macro game, mech to mech. Alright, so he will advance on to face Bly, and definitely be following that one. But first, gonna take a quick break. Thanks for watching, everyone. Up next, TvZ.